Council Licensing Subcommittee Alcohol and Gambling being held on Wednesday, the 2nd of October 2024. My name is Councillor Angie Boyes and I have been elected Chair of the committee. The meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel, and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. Are there any public present today? If there are any public present, you're here to make representations to the meeting and are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery. The recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. Please note a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the fire alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest exit. If there is an emergency and we do have to evacuate the building at any time, you will be taken to the relevant exit with a member of staff. So, to start the meeting, agenda item 2, any apologies? I don't think we have any. None have been received. Agenda item 3, any declarations of interest? I have none. None? Okay, no declarations of interest. Agenda item 4, the determination of a new application for a premises licence. Because this is a regulatory item, members must be present and have heard the proceedings in their entirety to vote on this item. We will ensure that the applicant and the applicant's representative, if they have one, are present in the meeting. I will ask the licensing officer to introduce the report to start with. Members will get an opportunity to ask the licensing officer questions. The applicant or their representative, if present, will get an opportunity to ask the licensing officer questions. The objector will be given an opportunity to speak, and we ask that you limit this to no more than 10 minutes. The application or their representatives will then be given an opportunity to present their application or make their case. We ask applicants to try to limit this to no more than 10 minutes, please. Members can ask the applicant questions. Members will then debate the matter. Applicant will be given a final right of reply. I will read the resolution that we are voting on, and then we will go on to vote. I would like to invite the Head of Public Protection to introduce the report, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Before you today is an application for a new premises licence in relation to Settebello Imperial Square in Cheltenham. And Appendix 1 of the officer's report is a copy of the application form for reference. The applicant has requested a premise licence to permit the sale of alcohol 10 a.m. to 2 a.m., the performance of live music and recorded music 2300 to 2 a.m., and the provision of late night refreshments from 2300 to 2 a.m. as well. In relation to this application, a representation was received from the Environmental Health Officer working in the Environmental Protection team. The objection is listed at 3.1 of the report for members to refer to. In essence, the Environmental Health Officer is seeking at midnight terminal hour for live and recorded music. It's worth noting that an attempt at mediation was unsuccessful, and there's further information at 3.2 in terms of the outcome of that attempt at mediation. In terms of our local policy, members are reminded of the 4 licensing objectives. Although they are of equal importance, the licensing objective that's most prevalent or most important to this is the prevention of public nuisance. At 4.2, members are reminded that the overriding principle adopted by this authority will be that each application will be deemed on its individual merits, and that the authority will also have regard to the wider considerations affecting the residential population and the amenity in the area, and to remind members that each objective is of equal importance. In terms of our licensing policy, specifically addressing public nuisance and measures to limit nuisance, the policy does state that the authority will expect applicants to set out in the operating schedule the steps taken or proposed to be taken to deal with potential for public nuisance arising from the operation of a premises. Applicants should identify and describe through a risk assessment how these risks will be managed. So members may wish to address that with the applicant. Just finally, in terms of our licensing policy, we've got a core hours for licensable activities policy, and that section of the policy does state that the authority will avoid arbitrary restrictions on licensing hours that undermine the principles of flexibility and consideration each application on its merits. The authority believes that licensable activities carried out within the core hours set out below, and I'll refer to that in a minute, will generally not have a harmful impact on licensing objectives. In terms of the application, the policy sets a terminal hour of 1 a.m. The committee is, of course, not bound by that. You have discretion to deviate from your policy, but it must be on exceptional circumstances and must be thoroughly reasoned. This is just to remind members, also taking this from the statutory guidance, that each responsible authority will be an expert in the field. So the statutory guidance does recognise that objections or representations from responsible authorities in particular should carry sufficient weight. The statutory guidance goes on to say that licensing authorities must therefore consider all relevant representations from responsible authorities carefully, but it does qualify to say that this must still stand up to scrutiny. So in terms of the application, as the committee knows, you must take steps that you consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The statutory guidance says that determination of whether an action or a step is appropriate for the promotion of licensing objectives requires an assessment of what action or steps would be suitable to achieve that end. It must be evidence-based, and the committee must make a decision based on the evidence you hear this afternoon. Just turning to the officer's comments at 6.4 of the report. So whilst all four of the licensing objectives are of equal importance, the principal objective relevant to this application is the prevention of public nuisance. The authority's statement on licensing policy provides guidance to applicants on measures it should take to mitigate the impact of application in the operation of public nuisance. These are outlined at 4.7 of the report. Members should refer to these steps when considering the impact and mitigation of this application on the promotion of the licensing objectives. The committee should also be mindful of the core hours, as we just defined, and the fact that at the moment the 2 a.m. terminal hour contravenes our licensing policy. The statute guidance makes clear that responsible authorities are considered experts in their field, and as such the committee should attach appropriate weight to the objection from the environmental health officer, but that's qualified by the fact that this should also stand up to scrutiny, so you should test that as well, not just taken as read. The statute guidance provides the committee with a broad discretion to do whatever it considers necessary. At 6.4h, there is the definition of what constitutes a public nuisance for the purpose of the statutory guidance. And then just finally, in terms of the decision-making powers available to the committee, you can grant the application as is applied for. You can grant the application with any amendments you consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. And that could be imposing conditions, amending conditions, changing times or licensable activities, or you can refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Firstly, are there any member questions for the officer?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just confirm that as far as we're aware, it was correctly advertised with notices and that the police have not objected, and there were no objections from members of the public, for example, residents in the vicinity?
Yeah, as far as we're aware, the application was advertised and publicised in the statutory requirements, and no other relevant objections were received, no.
And then in terms of the licensing objectives, which are on page 21, can I just check that these will need to go through a bit of a review process to make sure that they're captured in a way that is enforceable and measurable as a licensing condition?
Are you referring to the draft operating schedule? Yeah. So, if the committee is minded to grant the application subject to any changes to conditions, we will rephrase them in a way that's enforceable and clear, and we'll check with the applicant to ensure that everybody's happy. But they will need to be rewritten because at the moment they're not don't comply with the statutory requirements.
Any other questions from members for the officer? No? Okay, does the objector have any questions for the licensing officer?
No, no questions at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And does the applicant have any questions for the licensing officer?
Thank you. I will do, but it may be easier to do that a little later on when we identify what the particular issues are. But the primary question will be the objection clearly states that it needs to be considered by the committee that this particular building is not of a nature that is appropriate to grant the licence requested. And my only question, therefore, is what attributes to this building does he consider or are considered in the report that means it's not suitable?
So obviously the objection came from the environmental health officer. So I think that question is probably more appropriate aimed at the environmental officer who can then respond from a professional point of view. But as you say, that will probably come as the discussion develops.
Just a point of clarification on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask the objector to the licence from Environmental Health, Amy Boyle, to address the committee, please. Thank you.
Hi. So I'm Amy McCarthy. I'm Environmental Health Officer at Cheltenham Borough Council. Sorry. So as set out in the instruction by Louis, the Environmental Health Department proposed for licensable activities to end at midnight. Subsequently, this department submitted an objection to this premises licence application under the licensing objective of the prevention of public nuisance. Belgrave House is situated within the town centre in a mixed-use area, hosting both commercial and a number of residential properties. In the general area, there are 2 blocks of residential flats directly to the rear of Belgrave House, as well as multiple residential flats in a row running on from the premises on Imperial Square. The block to the rear is just over 40 metres away from the premises. There are no direct facing windows at the rear of this block. However, the residential premises on Imperial Square is around 84 metres from the external garden, and these residents do have direct line of sight to the premises, specifically the external garden area. This residential block is many years old and the single glazed windows, so it has single glazed windows and minimal insulation, meaning that they are more likely to be disturbed by the ingress of noise in the area. For many years, Pizza Express occupied the building and had the sell/supply of alcohol permitted on Monday to Saturday until midnight and on Sunday until 11:30 p.m. Prior to making this application, the applicant had transferred this licence with the existing times. Setabello now wished to seek longer/later licensable activities, namely the supply of alcohol and live and recorded music within the designated area on their plan, which does include the external garden area. At the moment, this has a steel frame with a glass structure, and this in itself will provide very little noise attenuation, especially as the glass planes are openable. The main concern from environmental health is the licensing objective of the prevention of public nuisance, due to its location to noise-sensitive residential homes around this premises. In short, if the premises were granted a licence to be open, selling alcohol, providing live and recorded music, as well as late-night refreshment until 2 a.m. and then closing at 2:30, it is our professional view that this operation is likely to cause a public nuisance. We are professionally very familiar with this area of town, and although this is a thriving part of the town centre, by well before 2:30 a.m, the background level of this area significantly drops. The average person at this time is asleep, therefore any noise would be far more noticeable and highly likely to be disruptive. This is further supported by the Licensing Act 2003 guidance, which states, For example, the most sensitive period for people being disturbed by unreasonably loud music is at night and into the early morning, when residents in adjacent properties may be attempting to go to sleep or are sleeping. Therefore, these residents will require protection from noise, and it is our view that this will be best achieved by limiting the hours of licensable activities. As stated in this department's initial consultation response, our proposed timings for licensable activities are suitable for the nature of this business. The applicant's business of Seto Bello in Cheltenham is marketed online as a cocktail bar and casual dining, Belgrave House, the restaurant, and private dining. All of the marketing refers to dining, and it is not advertised as a late-night venue, and therefore our recommended hours of licensable activities are in line with the public advertising. Furthermore, the Gloucester branch of Seto Bello, located in the busy Gloucester Quays, has advertised opening hours of Monday to Saturday until 11 p.m. and until 10 p.m. on Sundays. This further supports our view that the business model is one of dining with the accompanying provision of alcohol, and therefore the main provision is that of a restaurant, not a late-night drinking establishment. We would also like to draw the committee's attention to the condition as put forward by PC Jeremy Sansom, the police licensing officer, of there will be no dancing within the premises when licensable activities are taking place. This accepted condition by the applicant supports the environmental health view that the premises is at its origin a restaurant and not a late-night venue where more typically dancing would take place. Additionally, the proposed timings are also in line with nearby businesses too. Chef Steakhouse is a restaurant that's situated opposite Belgrave House. This premises licence was granted in 2022, permitting the service of alcohol on Monday to Thursday until 11 p.m. and on Friday to Sunday until midnight. The opening hours reflect the same timings. Although on the Chef website, they only advertise their opening hours as Monday to Thursday until 10 p.m, Friday and Saturday until midnight, and Sunday until 9:30 p.m. This demonstrates that they do not utilise all their permitted hours for licensable activities. This premises, to our mind, is exceptionally similar in nature to Seto Bello, and therefore a large part of our proposed hours were based on this example. Furthermore, we understand that there are other premises in close proximity holding a premises licence permitting later activities, the closest being Imperial House. This licence has been in place far before the new Licensing Act came into force, and so these activities transferred over without consultation. This is not a recent licence approval which Environmental Health has had consultation on or added conditions to. Additionally, licensed premises applications are based on a case-by-case basis, and other nearby premises licenses don't set precedent for future applications. Also, in the area is Cheltenham Town Hall, who hosts a wide range of events. Management have confirmed to this department that the majority of these will end at 10 p.m. There have been some occasions where an event has ended at 11 p.m, however, this is deemed as unusual. There may then also be an approximate 30 minutes for customers to leave the premises. Again, this is a far earlier terminal hour for licensable activities than is permitted in their licence. Therefore, as they don't utilise the full times on their licence, this could provide an evidence base as to why there are very few noise complaints from this area. Keeping our proposed hours of operation and activities in mind, we also understand that from time to time, Seto Bello may wish to have the option to temporarily extend the operation hours of their business. There is scope under the Act for them to do this by way of utilising non-standard timings on the licence. They could also periodically apply for temporary event notices, and this would be by way of a very simple form and the application cost of £21. We feel that this offers the opportunity to operate for longer at agreed times of the year, but are not overburdening the business in terms of the time to apply nor the cost. Non-standard timings could be used for Christmas time, New Year's Eve and March Race Week, for example. The temporary event notices could be used for other nominated or applied dates for during the year. So in conclusion, for all of the reasons and rationale detailed, it is our professional view that the hours we have proposed for this premises are more suitable for the noise-sensitive receptors in the area, as well as the advertised business type the applicant has stated in the public realm. Finally, we support the statement from the legislative guidance on the Act of the approach of licensing authorities and responsible authorities should be one of prevention.
Thank you very much for your comments. Do members have any questions for the objector? You both do. Okay. Thank you very much.
Actually, it was a comment that the objector made that makes me ask a question of the officers, if that's okay. The objector said that they could apply for a temporary events notice for such as race week, but surely that would only be one night, wouldn't it not? Or...
Yeah, so, I mean, temporary events notices are not applications, they're just notices. So we just acknowledge the notice, but a temporary events notice can last for up to seven days. And I think you have up to, I can't remember exactly the point, how many. So they can submit temporary events notices at times during the year when they may want to go beyond what their normal premises license permits. But that's open to, that will be open to them regardless of what happens this evening. The right for a temporary events notice will apply, but they can apply for temporary events notices if there are key times in the year where they'll need to trade beyond what their license permits.
Sorry, but that would cover the whole of race week, for instance. It wouldn't be just a single night.
So a single temporary events notice can cover up to 7 days.
Okay, any more questions for you? No.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just a question, firstly, for the officers, because we've got the objection but not the email. And can you, for the record, just so that it's on there, which it would have been if we had the email, just put what your environmental health qualifications are so that everyone knows that's recorded for the record, please.
Sorry, we're just moving to make sure you can hear us. Hello, my name is Louise Boyle. I'm an environmental health officer here. Both Amy and myself I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in environmental health. Amy holds a master's, and we are both registered and accredited by the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. We're both also authorised for this purpose.
Brilliant, thank you. It's not calling into question, it's just we haven't got the email signatures that would have that in there, so thank you for that one. In terms of the risk for of the noise escaping, I'm assuming you're considering the premises behind, or the area behind on Imperial Lane as the noise sensitive premises that's the primary sort of focus of the objection. Is that correct?
In fact, that block doesn't have any windows that look directly onto here. So the main question would be a premises, residential premises, which is in the same row. Their address is still classed as Imperial Square. And as noted, they're a set distance away. So they would be the people with the main impact.
In terms of trying to address this in other ways, did you consider whether any further conditions, limits on the licensable activity might be an alternative way of reducing the risk of there being a breach of the public nuisance licensing objective via conditioning something rather than, say, changing the terminal hour?
So for us in environmental health, when we are consulted on premises licence applications, one of the controls we can put forward is time. And like Amy, my colleague, mentioned at the end of her submission, we're looking at this being preventative. Conditions are certainly a really useful way to control licensable activities, and they're something that we do look at, and we would welcome But I think for us, looking at the whole application, for us, the best way and the most preventative way in order to control and limit the likelihood of there being a public nuisance was control of time in the terminal hour.
And I guess, I mean, from the point of view of the noise nuisance, which is what I understand is the primary concern, is this from the live and the recorded music, or is this from the egress of customers, or is it a mixture of both?
For us, it would be a mixture of both. Predominantly when the business is in operation, it would be the licensable activities in terms of the live and recorded music. But you also get noise which is to an extent less controllable in terms of people. People who are intoxicated tend to be louder, and especially if they've gone from an area where there's been music of whatever level, when they then leave that premises, they're more likely to be louder if they've perhaps intoxicated. They will be louder leaving an area when the background level's quieter because it's early hours of the morning, as proposed by the applicant.
And I guess finally, in terms of live music, it covers a vast array of different types of live music, from someone playing an unamplified acoustic instrument within the premises to amplified music, which probably doesn't really seem fitting for the venue. But have we thought about what might be acceptable in terms of some sort of live music that is acceptable, where it's an acoustic instrument at whatever time, and also things like noise limits on the internal that can be measured. You know, you can install something that says sound pressure level must not exceed however many decibels at whatever distance in whatever location, which might be able to give you a quantifiable way of limiting the noise from recorded music at particular times.
There's a couple of points there. So the first one I would probably take is we have to look at the application as a whole. So live and recorded music is certainly part of that. There has been, there could be options for conditions on things like music. Live music, as you say, can be everything from one man with a guitar, one person with a guitar, completely acoustic, through to something a bit more amplified. However, for us, we're looking at this objection as a whole. So like you rightly pointed out earlier, you've got not only the licensable activities of the music, but you've got alcohol till that time, and then people leaving at that time, and the terminal hour that's been put forward. In terms of limits, statutory nuisance under the Environmental Protection Act is not measured by decibels. It's officer judgment within our professional. It's subjective, and that is from a complainant's property rather than from within a property where there is a report of a noise disturbance. Limiters will only act as good as they are for that moment, and because it's statutory nuisance that we assess noise by, limits would be different for every place, every complainant, every premises it could be. So we are better to look at the current legislation that allows us to take action on noise, which is statutory nuisance, and that's not governed by decibels. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like now to ask the applicant to address the committee, and if you could stick to 10 minutes, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. As I understand the position, I can make my formal submission up right at the end. To clarify the points that have just been very helpfully put by Environmental Health, some of the concerns that I've had, and thank you for the councillor for raising a few of those type of things, my view was to check what actual incidents of public nuisance have arisen in the vicinity of these premises lately. The police licensing officer wasn't able to assist me. The only way it can be found out is by making a formal freedom of information request, which takes weeks, I'm afraid. One of my questions that I would have put to Environmental Health after I've now heard their statement is whether these are assumed potential incidents or whether they are actually reacting to some that have occurred repetitively in this vicinity. The other aspect is the mitigation measure, and during the period of mediation, I did offer that we would be able to end the live music hour to midnight rather than 2 a.m. But that wasn't accepted in order to remove the global objection. That offer is still on the table, as I've mentioned in my submission later. But I've just clarified with my client. I've been to the premises today, and I don't believe the Environmental Protection Team have yet had the opportunity to go there, although I understand that the maximum number in the bar, 34 seating area. This isn't a venue where there are going to be crowds of people. Its primary use is a restaurant on 3 floors. There is a conservatory, double glazed, brand new, meets all the planning requirements, and there is no proposal whatsoever to have live music in that conservatory. There may be some background music, but this is a trattoria. This is an Italian-themed restaurant where the music, the entertainment and the food is very high quality, and it does respect the clientele's peace of mind whilst they're in there. It is not a dance floor. It is not a late night drinking venue. Its primary purpose is to provide some entertainment at appropriate times and to have background music. So the music aspect is one thing. The second aspect regarding the potential of noise from people leaving. There's no car park associated with these premises. There's no parking immediately outside in Imperial Square. So people will be coming in and out in dribs and drabs. There will be no reason for crowds to enter at one time or leave at one time. Maximum table that there is for private dining is 14 people. And I hope that puts it into context. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, I'm going to ask the committee if they have any questions for the applicant. I have some. Okay. Do you want to start, Councillor Wheeler?
Yes, I think you've pretty much answered this, but just to sort of cross the T's, dot the I's. The noise is the main thing. I think we've already decided that. Music, whether recorded or live, I think I'm right in saying will be background entertainment. You're not intending to have a rock band there, or you may have, I don't know, a classical guitarist. You might have what do they call them? Yeah, a chamber orchestra. That's what I was trying to think of. But it will be background music to make the dining experience a little bit nicer. It won't be music for the sake of music, which it would be if you had a rock band there. I think I'm right in saying that, yes?
Yes, the idea is to create what you often find in continental similar venues. It's for people to enjoy their dining experience and being there. It's not there to go and see a group or a band as you would do in the town hall, for instance.
And my other question was going to be, it's just slipped my mind now. I think you said just now that you would be prepared to terminate the music side of things at 12 or at an earlier hour than 2 o'clock if the committee felt that that was helpful.
Yes, my clients offered that at the time of mediation. They repeat it today because live music is something that they'd like to give, but if the committee feel that the propensity for there to be a nuisance, and that is the last thing my clients want to have, is a complaint of public nuisance against them. That's absolutely against all the management and all their skills and experience. But if it helps the committee, yes, they would be prepared to accept a terminating hour of the live music at midnight.
Thank you. I would just like to bring in the Public Protection Officer at this moment, just to clarify a few points for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just there's been some discussion around background music and live music and recorded music, and it might just be useful for the committee to understand that under Schedule 1 of the Licensing Act, the exemptions, it states that the provision of entertainment consisting of the performance of live music or the playing of recorded music is not to be regarded as the provision of regulated entertainment, i.e. the licensable bit, for the purpose of this Act to the extent that it is incidental to some other activity which in itself is not regulated entertainment. So the general rule is that background music is incidental to people coming to the restaurant to eat, which in itself is not a licensable activity. So if it's just background music, that element of that wouldn't require a license. I think it's when the performance of live music and the playing of recorded music becomes more substantial part of the operation of the business and people go there for that purpose, then we are moving into the realms of needing a license. But so I think it's just important for the committee to clarify if this is just purely always background music, then the discussion around whether you need a license is actually not relevant because it's exempt under Schedule 1 of the Act. If it becomes more substantial as part of the operation and people go there for that purpose, then that is the discussion around licensing of entertainment that's relevant.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Yes?
On that, that leads me to ask, were the applicants made aware of this? Because that being the case, what they're suggesting is it is simply background music and not the licensable side of the thing.
So as far as I'm aware, it wasn't raised with officers, but I don't know, the consultant might have advised the client, so he might be better to answer that question.
Thank you. It is intended to have some live music. And the type of people who are going to give that background music might be a guitarist, as you say, a singer, a saxophone player, but it's not the rock band type environment. There isn't room for it. I hope you've seen some of the photographs of the premises. It's just not that sort of venue. But it is hoped on some occasions to have some live music where somebody would just go around. But it is not the intention to have the live music that maybe Environmental Protection are thinking it's going to have. That's not the intention whatsoever. They have Setobello at the Gloucester Docks was referred to in the opening, and there is entertainment of that nature there. The reason that the operating hours are different at Gloucester Docks is because the docks operating company, docks trading company, have very strict hours that apply to every establishment at Gloucester Docks. And that is the fact. There is also residential accommodation almost directly above the premises, but they are scattered, student accommodation, etc., throughout the docks, which is why they have this blanket hour. In Cheltenham, as I will refer to later, there are other premises with later hours. We've heard about why the Imperial House next door has these late hours, but of course, the Imperial House is closer to the residential properties that have just been referred to than even our premises. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the live music that you're proposing, is this pretty much in its entirety unamplified, so acoustic without the use of electronic amplification? Because if that's the case, we could probably, that might be a reasonable condition that would, you know, it's acoustic instruments. Now, okay, you can make a heck of a racket with a drum, but I'm not sure that that would really be fitting your thing. So it might be that we can have no amplified live music, which may go some way, but I want to just check with you first.
Yeah, my client confirms it's quite happy to have unamplified because that's not the nature of the entertainers they engage.
Can I just step in a sec? I'm mindful that you just referred to you were going to come back to speak. I don't think you've actually covered off on what you're actually going to, and we've gone to questions. So if you want to actually finish what you were going to say, then we'll come back to our questions, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't sure if you wanted me just to sum up at the end with that, but I'll do it now. Thank you. I have dealt with the licensing matters for my client for the last 15 years. My client here, Mr. Bufolco, has had his personal license for 15 years. He's operated businesses throughout that period without any incidents or intervention of the licensing authorities at all. The modus operandi of this company is to provide high quality restaurant facilities, but with some added entertainment or background music that adds to the ambience, but it is not the main attraction for people coming to their business. We know where it is located. I'm sure you're quite aware it used to be the Pizza Express building. It is a very solid building. The main building is a solid stone structure. The windows are large, but there are drapes, there are window coverings. Discussed it with the licensing officer, discussed it with the police licensing officer, and all those measures have been installed in the premises to avoid flashing lights, music escaping and noise escaping just generally. My clients have spent about £1 million on refurbishing this building to make sure it's of very high standard. The managers and the staff are well skilled and experienced in restaurant and bar work. There is a letter that's been produced from Sterling, who are a professional door supervisor firm. The licensing officer from the police has asked us to confirm that we will have door supervisors, doubled up at Race Week and other special events. And these people have actually complimented my clients. I'll read the one sentence. We have supported and advised them during the perpetration of their new site. It is so pleasing to work with clients who are passionate about making their site a memorable and safe experience for locals and visitors to Cheltenham. Their attention to detail is absolutely incredible. And I hope that echoes what I'm trying to put forward. I've dealt with the proposal to cut off and deal with amplified music. I've indicated to you the limited area that there is in the cocktail bar for customers, that it's not for huge crowds. And we anticipate that people come in dribs and drabs, in groups, and leave in the same way. So there'll be no mass exodus at the end of a show, like at the end of the town hall. It's not the same. And I've also highlighted by circulating some other premises licenses, which I have obtained from the licensing officer. I've heard from the environmental protection team that the Imperial House came under the radar because it's a very old license. But Number 131 on the promenade. If you happen to look at their premises licence, sales supply of alcohol Thursday to 3 a.m, Monday to Wednesday 2 a.m, Friday to Sunday 3 a.m, just up the road from these premises. The Nook, well, they call it the Quad and Nook, which is opposite in the quadrangle. Alcohol every day, 2 a.m. They do live music as well, but that's to 2 a.m. But they stay indoors. Every activity at Belgrave House is indoors. There is no outdoor activity whatsoever. There is another place called the Flight Club up at the brewery, but that's slightly a different type of premises. But it does demonstrate that the committee has quite rightly viewed these premises, considered what's proposed, and given a variation from your standard policy. And what I'm asking the committee to do today will be to accept that the nature of these premises and the nature of the business are not likely to cause a public nuisance. The measures that the client has taken to prevent those incidents happening is as far as they can go. They've looked at every nook and cranny, and that therefore the request for the alcohol licence at 2 a.m. is acceptable. My final point on that at the moment is that it's been indicated in the application that these hours are requested to give flexibility. It is not anticipated that these premises will be open to the maximum every time, as has been indicated that other premises, even to the town hall, close at 10 sometimes 11. It's the flexibility. Unfortunately, although we've heard from the Head of Public Protection that the TENS process is available for certain events, it is very difficult to get the timing right on a TENS when you have to book live entertainment months in advance. It is also not a guaranteed process. It is open to objection. And what I'm saying is you need to give someone a chance. This is a new business. They've invested a lot of money into it and a lot of skill and experience, and they want to make it work. The last thing they want to do is incur any problems with any of the authorities. And I'm asking the committee to give them that chance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we'll return to questions now, okay? Councillor Mangan.
Thanks, Chair. It's probably on the maps, but or the drawings, but can I confirm whether your points of entrance and egress, both for your staff and also for your customers, so things like staff and ancillary things like recycling, where they are? I'm assuming, but hopefully you can confirm, that the entrance is from Imperial Square and there'll be no public access or egress via Imperial Lane, but there might be recycling facilities out the back and your staff may use that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We have no connection with Imperial Lane at all. Everything's with the
So where is the recycling and the waste? Is that in Imperial Lane or is that still at the front?
That's on our terrace at the back, at the very back of our terrace, which is on the front of the building. It's not, sorry, it's on our terrace, which is the back of our terrace, which is at the front of the building, but that isn't Imperial Lane.
And the other question that I'd picked up was about people going outside to smoke late at night. You can imagine a gathering of people yakking with how you'll manage people outside if they're going out to smoke late at night, because that could cause a noise nuisance as well.
All the smoking is kept inside our courtyard at the very back, so there's no activity on the front of the premises. It's all kept inside the courtyard. There's a smoking area
It's at the rear of the conservatory, nearest to the hedge and wall at the back. The entire conservatory building is in between where someone would smoke. Hopefully you can just see it on the back of the photograph.
I'm just trying to sort of visualize in my head what premises are adjacent and how that noise sensitivity works. So forgive me because I can't visualize the site at the moment. I know what the frontage looks like. It's trying to work out the, yeah.
It's suggesting round here, there's room.
Right.
I went there and checked today, anticipating this question, because it's a narrow section. There is a 4 metre high conservatory here, and there is a 4 metre high, well, 3.5, 4 metre high hedge and wall directly behind it. It is contained.
Okay. I understand you're talking about that area that's down the side of the conservatory. Right. Right, okay. Okay, I have a couple of questions as well. Firstly, I had a good look at your website before I came here today, and I just wanted, my sort of first question was, if this is a restaurant, why do you require opening hours until 2 o'clock in the morning if it's a restaurant? Because on your website, the opening hours, the restaurant itself closes latest 10 p.m. and Soto, the cocktail bar, I understand it, the timings there, the latest is 12, it's midnight, Friday to Saturday. So what are we actually talking about in that sort of 2 hours between midnight and 2 in the morning? What activity is taking place in the premises at those times?
So Belgrave House is the main restaurant on the ground floor, and Soto is the lower basement area, which is a restaurant as well. It's just a different type of dining. We branded it differently. So Soto is open till 12, but Belgrave House, the main restaurant area, is open till 10. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Well, it doesn't really answer my question as what takes place between midnight and 2 in the morning. Why were you applying for a license until 2 in the morning?
So we're only planning on opening until 12, but we just want the flexibility that for people after their dinner, if they want to enjoy a cocktail or a couple of drinks just to relax, that they're not rushed out on the street straight after their dinner. They just have more time to enjoy it, basically.
Okay, thank you. And just to confirm, you earlier suggested there was going to be no live music in the conservatory at all. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And another question. Thank you for the submissions and the detail you've put into the application there. I just had a quick question where you mentioned that customers will be requested to respect others when leaving the premises. Will that be via a sign or will that be the door people?
So we have got a sign, please be mindful of the neighbours. However, we do have the security team who will act as concierge service to make sure everyone behaves in an orderly manner and respectful of the neighbours.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do the committee have any more questions for the applicant? No? No more questions? Okay, in that case, we'll move to the member debate. Before I open this debate, I will remind you that it is important for you to give due regard to the Council's licensing policy and that if you deviate from that policy, you give clear reasons for doing so. It's important that you only take into account material licensing considerations and that your decisions are reasonable, proportionate and rational. Okay, who would like to start the debate then? Okay, on you go.
Yes, having worked in the catering trade in my former life, long time ago, I do know how difficult the catering industry is and how much you have to offer to make your bread. This strikes me as, can I use the term, quite a classy premises. You don't open a greasy spoon in a venue such as that. So I'm more than happy to accept the type of establishment the applicant is trying to offer, and the fact that they really aren't intending to have a rock band there 7 days a week until 2 o'clock in the morning, that we will just be looking at creating an ambience within the establishment to enhance the dining experience. If it makes the objectors happy, I would be prepared to suggest that perhaps no more than a maximum, that the amplified music be restricted to 12 as a maximum, maybe even 1. But I think, yes, if we say that amplified music is restricted till 12, I would be quite happy with that. And as officers have said, they can have background music without our permission anyway. Other than that, yes, I'm quite happy with all the other applications, finishing times, and everything else as requested.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Weir. Councillor Winning.
Thank you, Chair. So I think we need to be careful that when we mean amplified music or recorded music. I think we'd said that the applicant was happy to have no amplified, as in no amplified live music as something that was acceptable, and to end live music have a terminal hour for that at midnight, which I think as a condition I'd be keen to apply. Our policy seems to say terminal hour of 1 a.m. and it's trying to work out whether we have enough evidence to obviously Environmental Health have said midnight, our policy says 1 and the applicant says 2, so we have quite a range of things to consider, and I appreciate the objection and I understand the concerns. Certainly in my role as chair of the overall licensing committee, I've received complaints from residents of Imperial Lane. So I do understand there are noise sensitive premises in this area. Equally, my thought is our policy says 1 a.m. and I think we may well be able to condition 1 a.m. And it may be that we think it may be that the applicant has specific times such as race week when they would want 2 a.m, which we might be able to put in as a specific exception anyway, if we know there are certain times when, you know, the town is incredibly busy. And it may be worth going back to the applicant about, we say 1 a.m. as the terminal hour, but we put in a race week extension to 2 a.m. if that is what the applicant, if that's why one of the reasons why the applicants applied for 2 a.m. In terms of other noise nuisance, I would be really keen to restrict when bottles, glass and all of that type of stuff can be recycled, because the noise of recycling outside of hours is definitely likely to be quite invasive and disturbing. And I think because noise nuisance has been raised, there's a standard condition, and I would imagine it's not doing recycling or deliveries outside of something like 7 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. or something like that might be reasonable given it's a town centre location. There does seem to be a way of, I'm just trying to find the condition in our list. Bear with me a second. So there's a condition that just says where any regulated entertainment occurs at the premises, the designated premises supervisor or a person nominated by them will ensure the noise from such activities is effectively inaudible. It says inside the nearest noise sensitive premises, but it may well be. You can't necessarily go into the noise sensitive premises, but if we can identify that, then we could potentially limit that by putting that condition on the applicant. I think there's some conditions about closing windows to keep noise, egress, and we've got two model pool conditions, one that says 10 p.m, one that says 11 p.m, so 2300 hours. Windows closed, kept closed when the activity is going on. Again, that seems to fit with what the applicant is doing as a method. And there's also a way of making sure that neighbouring premises have got the contact details of the DPS, so that in the first instance they can be phoned or contacted about the noise. And again, I'm just trying to find the condition in there. I mean, looking at it, it is in a town centre area. According to our licensing policy, Appendix D, it's within the designated area of concern, which is what we've determined is the town centre. So the policy presumption seems to be 1 a.m. for the terminal hour. And if it is purely a restaurant, other than certain times, and maybe the applicant would like to address that, it does feel going beyond that, if it is just a restaurant, seems a bit excessive. The later hours for things like nightclubs and what have you is 3 a.m. And I since it's not operating as that, I'm a bit baffled as to the going beyond 1 a.m, except for things like race week. In terms of other premises that were mentioned, I am aware that 131 certainly has had issues with noise. I remember sitting on a subcommittee trying to deal with that. So there are clearly noise sensitive premises within the town centre. Equally, not far away from this, you've got the nighttime venues of on Regent Street and also onto the promenade. So under the prom, Moo Moo, and what's it now called? Pop World? Yeah. So it is in that part of town where there is already noise. As I say, that's my sort of thoughts on it, that we probably don't necessarily, I'd need more reasons for varying the policy beyond opening hours of 1 a.m. as a standard thing, but I can understand why certain events, racing events, and maybe some other things in the run up to Christmas may want the applicant may want later hours as a standard thing, but without going through the TEM process. I think if we can work out what those are, we can probably put those onto the licence. I get a feeling that some of the other things we may be able to condition rather than refuse, and I think the general that's my position, as it were, or that's my feeling. But I think it's for others to have their say, and also for the applicant maybe will want to explain some more before we sum up, as it were.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Billing. I do have a few points, then I'll come to you, Councillor Wheeler. So obviously, the policy core hours are 1 a.m, and the application does actually contravene our own policy. And do we have enough to satisfy us that we want to deviate from that policy. I'm not sure that we do. The statutory guidance talks about responsible authorities and they should be considered experts in their field, which of course they are. And there's a certain amount of weight that we have to apply to the responsible authorities. Prevention of public nuisance is paramount. It's one of our licensing objectives, and there could be a nuisance at 2:00 in the morning. Licensing objectives are very clear. One of that is the prevention of public nuisance, and we have to have regard for that. If the environmental health, the responsible authority are not happy with 2 a.m., I have to take that, and we have to take that into consideration. We really do, and we have to work with what is appropriate as well for the applicant, and what is also appropriate in line with the licensing objectives. And our focus here is steps considered appropriate to promote that licensing objective. I thought everyone's made some very, very valid points. Councillor Wiener, I completely agree with what you're saying too. This looks like a really good offering. There were no objections from the police or residents. And with, I think that we could possibly work if the committee are in agreement with the 1 a.m. For the terminal hour being 1 a.m. But we'd have to look at the amplified live music aspect being at midnight, like Councillor Willingham suggested. So I agree with everything that the committee have said. Was there something else you wanted to add on, Councillor Whelan?
Yes, it was just a point of clarity, really. The applicant made the point that there could be objections to a temporary events notice. That's not really an issue, is it? If they put in, because they were saying that there is a process to go through, and if they've got to book months in advance for live music, and then they find they can't get the temporary events notice, that might create problems. But generally speaking, a temporary events notice is pretty much rubber stamp, isn't it? Providing they've got there.
So that's not quite the case. Environmental health or the police can submit a counter notice in relation to temporary events notice, which in effect is an objection, but then it will bring the matter back to the committee if there's a counter notice to 10, a temporary events notice. There's no restriction in terms of the advance notice they have to give by way of 10, so they could potentially give months notice, or there's only a statutory limit on terms of the minimum periods, not the maximum periods they can serve a 10 on the authority. So they won't be restricted in terms of submitting 10s months in advance, but I appreciate from a business point of view, things change, people cancel bookings. So, 10 may, and I can't comment on that, and the applicant may want to comment on that. It may be that it would be difficult in some cases to manage last minute changes because you can't vary a 10, you can't substitute a 10. Once we get within that sort of 10 working days period, they wouldn't be able to change the 10, get a new temporary events notice because they'll be out of time for that.
There's also something I wanted to discuss with the committee as well, was that you mentioned, Councillor William, the exemption to 2 p.m. during race week. Is that something that we'd want to put within, to put to the I don't know if we speak to the licensing officer, or how would that work?
So I think it's just important for the committee to understand, of course, that you shouldn't sort of veer into undisputed territory. The sale of alcohol till 2 o'clock is not disputed here. The police haven't objected to it. So to some extent, although you can technically take into consideration, there's no dispute. So I think your deliberations is really around the issue around live music and recorded music. If our policy position is 1 a.m., that's your starting position, you deviate either way. So you can deviate and give them more, or you can deviate and give them less. But the principle is the same, that if you deviate from the 1 a.m. policy position, you then need to have the extraordinary sort of circumstances and the reasons for deviating either way. But just important to note, your deliberations is really just around the entertainment aspect. The sale of alcohol to 2 o'clock is not really in dispute.
So in that case, we're talking about the 12 o'clock live music and 1 o'clock potentially for the opening hours. Is that something?
Well, the opening hours would need to be notionally half an hour longer. So the opening hours are notionally half an hour longer than the sale of alcohol to allow people to wind down. And so what we're looking at, I guess, is when recorded music would finish. Is that, have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, so you can condition the license to effectively impose a 30-minute drinking up time to finish by 2 o'clock. So we don't then straight into 2:30, for example. But effectively, your consideration should be just around the issue of entertainment. And it sounds like it's the debate around whether it's a 12 o'clock finish or a 1 a.m. finish for entertainment.
Okay, what do colleagues feel about that?
Can I propose then that, as you said, maybe a 1:30, so a half an hour's drinking up, so they get the 2 o'clock finish, but for the music side of things, it remains as our, 1 o'clock.
Okay. I thought we had discussed that perhaps 12 o'clock for the live music and 1 o'clock for the... We weren't deviating from policy.
I thought policy was 1 o'clock. That's why I said not the 12 o'clock. But I'm easy.
So if I've understood, so what the applicants applied for is opening hours, 09:30, so on page 20 of our document bundle, they've applied for 09:30 to 02:30 as their opening hours. And then we've got where's the live music? So we've got recorded music standard times, which is from 2300 until 0200. So the question then is, how do we deal with the recorded music? So that would seem to fit policy. We've got environmental health saying midnight, which gives them 1 hour of recorded music, which means there's no recorded music other than ancillary stuff when the premises are open for the 2 hours. The policy seems to say 1 a.m. and the objector has said midnight. The policy would be indicative of 1 a.m. and the applicant has applied for 2 a.m. And then live music, we've got two things that I think are in agreement, which is it won't be amplified, so it will only be acoustic instruments, and that the live music would end at midnight. So I think that one is agreed, that the live music would end at midnight and it won't be outside, i.e. it will not be in the conservatory, are the things that I picked up from the applicant. So really the question, if we're not disputing the sale of alcohol and the opening times being allowed until 02:30, or sale of alcohol until 2 and opening times until 02:30 because we've had no objections from the police, then the real question seems to be, when does live music end? Midnight, 1 a.m. or 2? If I've understood this correctly of what's being said. But what I was going to say, sorry, Chair, before you, if I can, the objection itself says live and recorded music until this is the request for the objection. So it says live and recorded music, 2300 till midnight, and then opening hours, 09:30 until midnight. Well, you can't sell alcohol if you're not open. So I think there is, the objection is notionally saying midnight, and the policy says 1, and the applicant has requested 2, with then 2 a.m. for sale of alcohol with a further half an hour to clear people from the premises. So I think we do need to consider the alcohol as well, because you can't sell it if you're not open.
Sorry, just for the sake of the record, the discussion I just had with the chair was, although the application for, so opening hours are not licensable activities, so they can open whenever they want. If they don't do licensed activities, they can open 24 hours a day. So obviously the licensing activities sort of synchronise with the opening hours, but I did the committee, so although they've applied for a 2:30 closing time, not terminal hour, closing time, you're not bound by that. So you can still say, for example, if you're minded to do so, sale of alcohol stops at 1:30, because we're not licensing consumption, we're licensing sale. So the sale of alcohol can stop at 1:30, drinking up time finishes at 2:00. So you have discretion to have that discussion. You're not bound by the opening hours. So, and as I said before, the guidance says you shouldn't trade on undisputed areas. The alcohol is technically not undisputed because no one has raised objection in relation to it, but it doesn't affect your discretion. You can still, it's open to the committee to have that discussion, but it just needs to be justified. So if you make any changes to undisputed areas, it just needs to be clearly justified. And it needs to put us in a defendable position if we are appealed, for example. But point is, you're not bound by the 2:30 proposed terminal hour. You can vary that if you think it's appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Now, would you like to make a comment? Is that permitted? Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chair. Yes, I would reflect Louis' points. Although we haven't objected to the sale of the alcohol because we're more here in terms of public nuisance, for us, like we mentioned in our submission, it's about noise of people who are potentially intoxicated leaving at that time. And although I absolutely agree that the committee are not here to licence the closing time, our investigative role could be to investigate noise of people leaving at that terminal hour of 02:30 who are intoxicating and making noise. So although we haven't objected to the sale of the alcohol and the opening hours aren't licensable, we would ask the committee to take that into consideration in the realms of operation public nuisance, etc. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Right, how would the committee like to proceed then with this? Do you want to have a final comment on how you want to proceed?
It might be useful to, Chair, to hear from the applicant about the sort of times when 2 a.m. is required, just to make sure. And it might, I think the two things I'm trying to get is I understand the environmental health concerns about the noise post midnight. What I'm trying to work out whether I have enough to vary the policy from 1 a.m, pull it back to midnight. I'm also trying to understand from the applicant's point of view why they're after, whether there is a way of limiting when they want 2 a.m, which might be aligned with certain events that would mean that they don't have to go through the temporary event notice process, because I believe that you are limited to a certain number of temporary event notices per year as well, so it's trying to work out whether there's some sort of compromise. And again, given mediation failed, it's whether we can understand where both sides are coming from, Chair.
So obviously the applicant will have a final right to reply because they may want to respond to some of the discussion. But as an alternative to temporary events notices, there is also something I think the Environmental Health Officer referred to as non-standard timings. So often premise licenses will have, if they know at key times in the year, New Year's Eve, Christmas, March races, Easter, that type of stuff, where they will want extended hours, it can be reflected on non-standard timings, which will negate the need for a temporary events notice, so it will form part of the permanent licence, but it does predicate on the fact that they are fairly defined, unchangeable periods year after year. Otherwise, they would need a licence variation. So to some extent, it provides them with greater flexibility, but also it restricts them.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? I think we kind of need to nail down what we're talking about here. And then have some sort of agreement here between the committee, and then we'll give the applicant the right to reply to that. So we've got environmental health saying midnight, the applicant 2 a.m, and the policy saying 1 a.m. Ultimately, what are the committee happy to approve here? Okay, we're going to allow the applicant now to respond to what we've discussed, and then we may adjourn as a committee to make some decisions. Okay?
Just to clarify, I'll deal with the music first, alcohol and closing hour second. With the music, it is confirmed that there will not be live music in the conservatory. It's confirmed that my client is offering to say no live music after, amplified music after midnight. If there is unamplified music and background recorded music, it would like 1 a.m, but if the committee is not prepared to accept that, we put forward the type of entertainment that we're having, the limited audience that's capable of fitting in the building, and therefore the ambience to my client is primary concern. It is not there to provide groups for people to come and see. The second aspect, which is the alcohol hours, is I call this, we need to look at the playing field, because this is a new business. It needs to compete with others in the vicinity. I've highlighted the permitted hours for the next door premises for those in the promenade. I have heard that there has been some noise disturbance from number 131, but looking at 131, there's a whole array of open tented areas at the front, which I anticipate might be the cause of that. This building is entirely enclosed. There are no outside activities and no outside car parking, and no reason why any entertainment noise or people enjoying drinking this cocktail bar, as we've been told, is limited to 34 people. The reasoning behind our request for this 2 a.m. flexible, usable licence, A, to avoid the TENS difficulties, B, have we put on all the non-standard timings that we need to, is Cheltenham has now become multicultural. Many European and international visitors come here, and in European towns and cities, it's the norm now for people to go out and dine and socialise later at night than they ever did in the past. Because other people can enjoy those facilities at nearby venues in Cheltenham, my clients just want to be there on a level playing field. They're not a massive organisation. They are not going to be hundreds and hundreds of people in there to worry about incoming people, outgoing people. And based on that, I believe the committee would have sufficient reason to extend that permission for the alcohol to 2 a.m. As a compromise, having heard the members, if it's felt that 2 a.m. is a cut-off for people leaving, and to therefore grant the alcohol licence to 1:30, I think my clients would be prepared to consider that, because you are concerned about noise nuisance. My final point on that is, although we have heard that occasionally there might be a disturbance or might be a phone call or somebody's complaining, we cannot change the other venues in the area. What we can do is very, very physically and professionally manage our building. And we believe that we've put everything in place in order to do that. And therefore, we are in your hands, but my submission is it is far better for you to agree a cut-off time for the alcohol now than rely on us getting 10 applications or listing 50 or 60 non-standard timing days. But it's in your hands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, I suggest that if it's all right, the committee can adjourn to discuss this. Is that fine? Yeah, okay. So the meeting is now adjourned and we'll return in 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back to the Licensing Subcommittee Alcohol and Gambling meeting tonight on the 2nd of October. The committee have reached a decision and the legal officer will now read out that decision.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the committee has taken into account the Licensing Act, the statutory guidance and the Council's licensing policy. Environmental Health have objected that, in their professional opinion, this premises will cause a nuisance. They are qualified officers saying that there are noise-sensitive premises in close proximity and they are the experts in this field. The committee understands that the prevention of noise nuisance is better than it coming to a licence review before a subcommittee. However, this is not the type of premises that is going to be a nightclub. It is a high-class restaurant. The music is commensurate to the type of food that they are going to be providing. The applicant has offered that there be no live music in the conservatory and no amplified music after midnight, and this is to be added as a condition. The committee have also said that they would like the recycling condition of there be no recycling before 7 o'clock in the morning and none after 9 o'clock at night, given the likely noise disturbance. The committee has heard that the building is enclosed, there are no external activities, so the committee would also add that when any regulated entertainment occurs past 11 o'clock at night, indoors, all windows and doors should be kept shut during these activities. The premises need to ensure that their neighbours have contact details of the DPS so that if there were to be any noise issues, they can be contacted directly at the time of the incident. The committee would like to accept the offer from the applicant to have a sign requesting that patrons leave quietly, and the committee are happy for the model condition to be used in relation to this. The committee can understand why there's the objection from Environmental Health, but it would seem to be irrational to go for anything other than 2 o'clock as requested by the applicant, given that a premises of a very similar nature directly opposite has been granted this time by this committee just under a year ago. It was a unanimous decision to grant as per the above, with the conditions offered and those as per the application. There is a right of appeal to the local magistrates court within 21 days of this decision. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to thank you all for coming and for your contributions. There are no other items on the agenda, so the meeting is 18:22 and the meeting is now closed.